There is a truth that never changes. Every empire at its height believes its money will last forever. That by printing a few more notes, minting a few more coins, power can stretch another century. But history has its own memory. It does not argue. It simply records who lost faith first. 2,000 years ago, Rome was the center of the world. From Egypt to Gaul, from North Africa to Britannia, Roman roads stretched like arteries. And in those veins flowed the denarius, the emblem of power, order, and trust. Soldiers were paid in denarius. Merchants tallied prices in denarius. Citizens believed that as long as the emperor's face shone on silver, Rome would stand. It was not just currency, it was faith in metal. Then the great machine began to eat itself. Wars demanded expansion. Legions demanded pay. Monuments demanded marble. The treasury, no matter how vast, could not satisfy ambition. So rulers adjusted the money. A little less silver, a little more base metal. The coin still gleamed, still bore Caesar's profile, but inside it was emptier. No one noticed. Then everyone did. Prices rose. Soldiers complained their wages bought less. People hoarded gold, bartered for food, stored grain. Money stopped being blood. It became a sickness. In the 3rd century, Rome entered a full monetary crisis. The denarius fell from over 90% silver to a mere sliver. Distant markets refused new coins. People demanded payment in gold or in bread. Border provinces revolted. The army fractured. A common currency once united the empire. Now the empire fractured into competing beliefs. No barbarian destroyed Rome. An invisible greed within those in power did. Each coin diluted was a measure of trust destroyed. No weapon is deadlier than the loss of faith. Does it sound familiar? Today we print trillions. Prices climb. Quietly, each of us wonders whether the paper in our wallets represents anything real. History does not repeat. It echoes. And Rome's echo rings through every inflation chart, every bailout, every emergency meeting of a central bank. Yet some survived. Not the loyalists, not the generals. The survivors were those who doubted first. They hid gold in walls, buried it in gardens, traded grain for land, and refused to stake their lives on promises alone. They were not traitors. They were human, protecting true belief with real things. Rome leaves a short message. When empires peak, their money begins to weaken. Not because of technical errors, but because trust is treated as something that can be printed instead of something to be preserved. If you lived in Rome as the denarius thinned, what would you do? Keep believing the emperor knew best, or quietly trade silver for gold, promises for reality. When purity became the last promise. After Rome fell, another empire rose from the ashes. The Byzantines inherited not only Roman lands, but Rome's obsession: how to keep money from rotting under power. They found an answer, at least for a long time. A new coin was born, the Solidus. Bright, pure, steady for more than 7 centuries, longer than most empires live. The Solidus was trust made visible. From Venice to Damascus, Alexandria to Constantinople, a single glance at that glow meant the promise was real. No tests, no doubts. For centuries it did not change. It was the medieval world's gold standard before the phrase existed. With the Solidus, Byzantium rediscovered what Rome had lost: discipline, a promise kept not by signatures, but by gold. But every story of trust begins with a whisper of temptation. An emperor needs funds for war. Another wants palaces to flatter the court. Purity is trimmed, 1% here, 2% there. The coin still shines. The emperor still smiles from the die, yet something essential is missing. Trust never collapses in a night. It crumbles grain by grain until people finally realize the promise hand is not the one they believed in. No cannons announced the fall of the Solidus, only silence. Merchants declined trade. Ships bypassed Constantinople. Mines ran dry. Paper claims replaced metal. Byzantium did not lose on the battlefield. It died in the marketplace. When money lost purity, the promise lost power. The empire forgot Rome's lesson. When power touches money, corruption begins not in the treasury, but in belief. Today we have central banks, laws, derivatives, and even blockchains. Yet deep inside the system, do the same hairline cracks widen? A little acceptable inflation, a manageable public debt, a temporary rescue. Each time money loses an invisible fraction of purity, everything keeps running, until people no longer wish to trade their labor for paper vows. And history once more smiles quietly. The survivors are never the loudest. They are the merchants who keep real gold. They do not declare loyalty or rebellion. They obey an ancient reflex. When promises are diluted, seek what cannot be diluted. That is more than a financial strategy. It is the human instinct to survive. Byzantium endured a millennium. Its coins set the world's standard. But in the end, it was not forged into falsehood by counterfeiters, but by intentions. The lesson endures. Once trust is diluted, it cannot be smelted back into purity. States recover from war. No state survives when its people stop believing in their own money. If even the Solidus lost its purity, what money can hold trust forever? The gold standard and a global order. Machines, railways, empires. Humanity asked a simple, deep question. If money is only paper, what gives it value? For more than a century, the answer was gold. The gold standard was not merely a policy, it was a vow. Every note could be exchanged for metal. The rule was absolute. Spend no more than the gold you possess. From London to Bombay, the world spoke a common language of value. London became the heart of finance. Gold was shipped, insured, stored, and priced there. A circle of trust formed around the pound, the Bank of England, and the vaults beneath Threadneedle Street. For decades, the mechanism ticked like a clock, but prosperity became a chain. Growth often outran the supply of metal. Governments faced a choice: keep the promise or keep their power. Many chose power. The golden discipline that kept inflation low also tightened the collar on growth. The system was orderly, but brittle. World War I shattered the vow. Nations needed rifles, not rules. Money was printed to feed the front. Gold drained from vaults. The standard was suspended, revived, then broken once more after the crash of 1929. People lost jobs. States lost metal. Financial discipline could not defeat human survival instincts. After the war, the United States, richest in gold, rewrote the rules. In 1944 at Bretton Woods, the dollar was tied to gold, and the world tied itself to the dollar. It was a gold standard by proxy, a thin pact between matter and promise. Gold moved from center to symbol. People still spoke of it, but few touched it. Two opposing lessons remain. There is no lasting prosperity without discipline, and there is no lasting discipline when humans cannot accept limits. Are we advancing or merely rotating between freedom and restraint? When the dollar left gold and faith was printed. In the summer of 1971, a 15-minute television address changed the world. President Richard Nixon calmly announced the temporary suspension of dollar convertibility into gold. That temporary has outlived half a century. Gold did not fall, it went quiet. For the first time, humanity was free to print faith. The decision had roots in war and deficits. After 1944, the dollar was as good as gold. But the Cold War, Korea, Vietnam, and social programs were financed with new dollars. Gold flowed out of America. Allies began asking to redeem paper for metal. Ships arrived to claim bars, and the pretense could not hold. On August 15, 1971, the cord was cut. From that moment, the global system rested on trust in the U.S. government. No more limits. No more purity to guarantee each note. Money was unbound from matter. Fiat means, let it be done. From then on, money could be created by decree. No minds, only keyboards. Every crisis met the same remedy: print more. It saves the short term, but erodes the scarcity money once relied on. The 70s delivered the bill. Gold soared, oil spiked, inflation rose. When money loses its limit, value loses its definition. Since then, each rescue has grown larger than the last. Those who owned real assets were sheltered. Those who held cash were shaved, year after year. Most nations followed America away from gold. Credit layered upon credit. Crises were saved with new issuance. We called it financial freedom. Perhaps it was only freedom from discipline. Gold left the center of the stage, but it never left the theater. Each time trust wavered, investors bought it, central banks hoarded it. You can simulate markets and money. You cannot press print on gold. When nations quietly buy back trust, half a century after 1971, many assumed gold was history. Yet after every crisis, gold rose, without speeches, without fanfare, reflecting the temperature of doubt. Since the 2010s, the biggest buyers have not been hedge funds but central banks. China, Russia, India, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, states accumulating metal to reduce dependence on the dollar. Global official reserves climb to highs unseen in decades. This is not speculation, it is survival. Why return to gold? Because modern conflict is waged through sanctions and payment rails. A nation can be removed from the financial grid with a keystroke. Monetary freedom cannot rest on a system someone else controls. Silent, physical, and sovereign, gold returned as the emblem of independence. Meanwhile, new blocks test alternative settlement, local currency trade, commodity exchange, even settlement in metal. No one declares a new standard. They simply act as if one exists. They do not attack the dollar. They pave roads around it, roads lined in gold. Not loud like war, patient like geology. History has a habit of returning to the place humanity believes it has outgrown. When global debt swells and each rescue dwarfs the last, a simple question rises. If everything is a promise, who keeps the final promise? The answer, again, is gold. Not because it is perfect, but because it does not lie. Trust is priceless, we say. It is also expensive. To restore it, we pay in reality. When inflation returns, when money thins, when promises become cheaper than ink, people remember the cool weight of metal and the quiet security of something heavier than words. The world is not going back to gold for nostalgia. It is going back for math. At some point, numbers exceed the system's tolerance. Gold becomes a neutral language between rivals. A bar can sit in Moscow and still command value in London, Shanghai, Riyadh. No currency can do that, only gold. Gold, memory, and the human instinct to survive. History does not repeat, it reflects. From Rome to Byzantium, from London to New York, and now to Shanghai, Dubai, Moscow, the question has not changed. What remains real when everything else is a promise? For 5,000 years, gold has not changed. It has been the blood of empires, the light of temples, the mirror of ambition. When coins first appeared, gold was the witness to promises. When paper was printed, gold was buried like a memory. But memories return. The 21st century believes everything can be coded, yet trust cannot be programmed. It must be guarded. When value becomes pure data, trust lives not in the heart, but on a server. When the server goes dark, reality goes with it. That is when we recognize that modernity is only a loop through an ancient lesson. While the world argues about digital money, gold returns quietly. Central banks buy. Nations stockpile. Investors tuck it away. Few proclaim belief in it, yet many want it in hand. In an immaterial age, the most desired thing is the heaviest. Humans are born trusting touch, what we can hold and keep. Gold does not promise, it simply is. When systems fail and paper burns and data disappears, metal remains, whispering that value does not need explanation. We reach for it not from greed, but from the fear of losing ourselves. In the end, gold is more than metal. It is a symbol, a mirror into the mind. How much in us is real and how much is the illusion of belief? Gold is the collective memory of our species, the one we cannot erase, no matter how often we try. When systems collapse, it reminds us of a simple line. Truth cannot be printed. Perhaps history's wheel never stops. Each generation relearns trust in its own way. From paper to data to chains of code, we still search for that ancient metal, not to grow rich, but to touch the real again. The return of gold does not begin with the fall of money. It begins with the slow erosion of trust.